In the early morning hours over Syria, a tense moment unfolded that almost sparked a larger fight between the world's two most powerful militaries. And it all started when a Russian Tu-2M3 backfire bomber, one of Moscow's long-range strike aircraft, flew directly toward a U.S.-operated zone near the Euphrates River on a mission that no one expected. The year was 2024. And the skies over Syria were anything but calm because both the United States and Russia were running active missions in the same airspace, separated. It's only by an agreement called deconfliction lines. But on this day, that line was crossed as radar operators at the U.S. Air Operations Center in Qatar spotted the bomber at 39,000 feet, flying at high speed. With no radio response, no flight plan, and no sign of slowing down, forcing the U.S. to react fast. Within minutes, two F-15E Strike Eagles from a nearby base took off, climbing hard toward the threat, with pilots reporting the Russian bomber's course as direct and aggressive. And when the jets closed in, they saw the Tu-2M3 carrying external fuel tanks and what looked like hardpoints capable of holding Kh-32 missiles, extremely fast cruise missiles designed to hit ships or ground targets. Something the U.S. could not ignore, so the F-15 pilots formed a defensive wall, locking their radars on the bomber to send a clear warning. Russian crews, however, kept flying straight, pushing deeper into the U.S. zone, and that's when the situation escalated, because the American jets switched to what is known as tactical posture, a move where jets take positions for possible missile shots while staying close enough to send a message without firing. And us commanders watched every second through real-time data feeds, knowing the Tu-2M3 could strike targets from 600 miles away. Tension climbed fast as both sides knew these bombers can carry 53,000 pounds of weapons, and Syria had seen Russian airstrikes before, including the intense 2015 to 2018 bombing runs that hit rebel-held areas. But this time, the bomber was alone, off course, and heading straight for a restricted U.S. area. At 19 miles distance, the lead F-15 made the final move, flying directly in front of the Tu-2M3 and releasing flares, a defensive countermeasure meant to distract, heat-seeking missiles but also used as a warning signal, and that finally forced the Russian crew to respond, banking left sharply, dropping altitude and pulling away from the U.S. zone. But the story didn't end there, because after turning away, the bomber made a second pass near the same area, something U.S. officials later called unsafe and unprofessional, and this triggered a stronger American reaction as more jets were scrambled, forming a three-layered defense barrier in the sky, with the first layer being the immediate fighter response, the second being AYCS surveillance aircraft tracking the bomber's every move, and the third being long-range missile systems on standby. Reports later confirmed that the Russian bomber was testing U.S. reaction time, a tactic used before by Russian aircraft during Cold War-style encounters, where one side flies close to the other's territory just to see how fast jets launch. By the 20-minute mark, the U.S. response was complete, and the bomber moved west toward the Mediterranean Sea, shadowed the entire time by American fighters that kept visual contact until it crossed out of the zone. U.S. officials briefed the incident later that day, noting that Russian aircraft had violated deconfliction agreements more than 300 times since 2021, each time raising the risk of accidental conflict, because Syria remains one of the few places where US and Russian forces operate in the same small region, with both air forces running missions every week. Military experts explain that the Tu-2M3 is no simple bomber. Its top speed of Mach 1.9 makes it faster than most commercial jets, and its strike range of over 3,000 miles allows it to hit targets across the Middle East without refueling. And that power is exactly why the U.S. reacts immediately whenever one comes close. On the ground, U.S. troops at bases across Syria went into high alert, prepared for any possible strike, while radar units tracked the bomber until it was fully out of range. In the days that followed, defense analysts argued that the incident was part of a much larger pattern, because Russia has increased its flights near US positions by nearly 50% in the last 2 years, often with fighters like the Su-35 escorting bombers, but this time it was different. The bomber flew alone, ignored radio calls, and entered protected space, forcing the U.S. to act with strength but also restraint. And that restraint mattered, because had the Tu-2M3 made one wrong move, even a small one, The F-15s had clearance to fire, and a single AIM-120 missile could have taken it down in seconds, triggering an international crisis. The incident ended without shots fired, but it showed how close the U.S. and Russia operate in Syria, where every flight, every radar lock, and every radio call has the power to change global events. And as long as bombers and fighters from both nations share the same sky, moments like this will continue. Each one a reminder that even a single aircraft can push two superpowers to the edge of something far bigger.